It is a strange and enduring truth of human conflict that the most decisive weapon of a war is not always forged from steel. It is not a tank or a battleship or a bomb that falls from the sky. Sometimes it is something far quieter, something weightless, a single story, a perfect lie. In the spring of 1943, the world was holding its breath in a silent, collective scream. The Nazi war machine held Europe in its iron grip, a continent shrouded in the long, dark shadow of the swastika. The Allies had achieved a hard-won victory in North Africa, but now they faced a far more daunting task: the invasion of Fortress Europe itself. The question was not if, but where. And on that question, tens of thousands of lives depended. In a quiet, smoke-filled room in London, a handful of intelligence officers were tasked not with overpowering the enemy, but with misleading him. With crafting a fiction so compelling, so detailed, and so audacious that it would change the very course of the Second World War. This is the story of Operation Mincemeat. It is the story of the spy who never was, and it is the story of how a dead man, a man with no name and no past, was given a voice that whispered a devastating lie directly into the ear of Adolf Hitler, a lie that would cost him everything. The strategic map on the wall of the Allied command center was a brutal testament to their dilemma. To strike at what Winston Churchill had called the soft underbelly of Europe, they had to cross the Mediterranean. And rising from the waves, almost touching the toe of Italy, was the island of Sicily. It was the obvious target. Too obvious. Every Allied general knew it, which meant every German general knew it as well. German intelligence, the Abwehr, was efficient, ruthless, and expecting them. The beaches of Sicily were being turned into a fortress of machine gun nests, artillery emplacements, and minefields. A direct assault would be a massacre. A generation of young men sent to die on shores fortified by an enemy who knew they were coming. The Allies needed a miracle. They needed to make the Germans look the other way. The task fell to a secretive group known as the 20 Committee, or the XX Committee, a specialized branch of MI5 tasked with controlling double agents and orchestrating deception. Within this committee, two remarkable minds came together. The first was Ewan Montague, a brilliant naval intelligence officer, a king's counsel in his civilian life. He was meticulous, logical, a man who understood the architecture of a compelling argument. The second was Charles Cholmondeley, an eccentric and imaginative flight lieutenant from the RAF. He was the dreamer, the one who saw possibilities where others saw only madness. It was Cholmondeley who recalled a strange, almost forgotten idea from a memo circulated years earlier, a memo that had been dismissed as the stuff of fiction. In fact, it had been inspired by a work of fiction, a 1930s thriller novel. The idea was as simple as it was macabre. You do not send a message with a living agent who can be captured and broken under torture. You do not rely on coded transmissions that can be intercepted and deciphered. Instead, you give your message to a messenger who cannot talk. You give it to the dead. The plan, codenamed Operation Mincemeat, was to acquire a human corpse, dress it in the uniform of a Royal Marines officer, plant fictitious but highly convincing documents in a briefcase chained to its wrist, and then let the tide deliver this silent courier to the shores of a country where German agents could find him. The chosen country was Spain. Officially neutral, its government under General Franco was riddled with pro-German sympathizers, specifically the coast of Huelva, where a known and highly effective Abwehr agent, Adolf Klaus, operated with chilling efficiency. The psychological weight of this decision was immense. This was not a theoretical exercise in a war room. It required the violation of a sacred taboo, the use of a human body as a prop. It was a descent into a moral gray area that unsettled even these hardened officers of espionage. But the alternative was the certain death of thousands in a frontal assault on Sicily. The cold, brutal calculus of war demanded they proceed. The search began, not for a hero, but for a vessel. They needed a specific kind of body. It could not be a soldier killed in action, as an autopsy would reveal the cause of death and expose the ruse. They needed a man who had died in a way that would be consistent with drowning, or at least exposure at sea. After a quiet and respectful search, they found him. In a cold, anonymous morgue in King's Cross, London, lay the body of Glyndwr Michael. He was a man who had lived a life on the margins, a Welsh laborer who had drifted to the big city, found no work, and eventually ingested rat poison in a fit of despair. His death was a small, private tragedy in a world consumed by global catastrophe. His life had been one of invisibility. In death, he would become the center of the most critical deception of the war. The poison he had taken had done its work in a way that produced minimal internal damage, and the coroner, a man of quiet patriotism named Bentley Purchase, was persuaded to release the body for a purpose of great national importance. Glyndwr Michael's identity was erased. From this moment on, he would be reborn as Captain, Acting Major, William Martin of the Royal Marines, a man who never existed, but who was about to become painstakingly, intimately real. If this story of ingenuity and sacrifice resonates with you, consider subscribing to our channel. We are dedicated to uncovering the forgotten tales of courage and intellect that shaped our world. Your support allows us to continue bringing these incredible narratives to light. The creation of Major William Martin was not merely an act of forgery, it was an act of biographical artistry. Montagu and his team understood a fundamental principle of deception. A big lie is only believable if it is wrapped in dozens of small, mundane truths. They weren't just creating a corpse with a briefcase. They were creating a life. They worked out of a sterile, refrigerated room in the basement of a London morgue, a place known only as Room 13. The air was thick with the scent of formaldehyde and the chilling silence of the dead. Here, in this grim workshop, they breathed a soul into their phantom courier. His wallet was filled not just with an identity card and military pass, but with the pocket litter of a man in love, a man with worries, a man who lived. They included 2 ticket stubs from a recent London theatre show, a bill from his tailor, a receipt for a new shirt. To make his character more believable, more human, they decided he needed financial troubles. So they included a stern letter from his bankers at Lloyd's, noting a small overdraft on his account. It was a masterful touch, a detail of such ordinary fallibility that it screamed authenticity. The most powerful element, however, was his connection to a fictional fiancée named Pam. A member of the MI5 staff, a young woman named Jean Leslie, provided a photograph of herself in a swimsuit. This picture went into Major Martin's wallet, the image of the girl waiting for him back home. But a photograph was not enough. They needed letters. Montagu and his team spent hours crafting the perfect love letters, full of inside jokes, gentle reprimands about him being careful, and passionate hopes for their future after the war. They were written and rewritten, infused with a sense of genuine intimacy and longing. One letter, creased as if read many times, spoke of their plans to marry the moment he returned. To ensure its authenticity, it was even sprayed with a light scent of perfume. They created a letter from his father, a document that subtly blended paternal pride with disapproval over his choice of fiancée, adding another layer of complex, believable humanity. Every item was a thread in an intricate tapestry of a life designed to be discovered, examined, and, most importantly, believed. While the personal effects were designed to build character, the official documents were designed to change the war. The centerpiece of the deception was a letter, not from one general to another, but a more personal correspondence between 2 high-ranking officers who knew each other well. Lieutenant General Sir Archibald Nye, Vice Chief of the Imperial General Staff, to General Sir Harold Alexander, the commander in North Africa. This was another psychological masterstroke. A formal operational order might be viewed with suspicion, but a personal letter between colleagues, filled with casual asides and even a slightly inappropriate joke about the Americans, would feel far more genuine. Within this disarmingly casual letter, the poison was planted. Nye's letter referred directly to upcoming Allied plans. He mentioned that the Allies were preparing to invade, but that the target was Greece. He even named specific beaches. To make the lie even more convincing, he added a secondary feint, suggesting another operation was being planned against the island of Sardinia. Sicily, the one true target, was mentioned almost as an afterthought, a piece of misdirection to fool the Germans into thinking the Allies were trying to trick them into defending it. It was a lie within a lie, a piece of brilliant, layered deception designed to play on the enemy's own intelligence and arrogance. The documents were placed in a black attaché case, the kind carried by staff officers, and for the final, crucial touch, it was chained to the belt of Major Martin's trench coat. An officer carrying documents of such importance would never let them out of his sight, not even in death. Now, they had their man, their story, and their poisoned bait. The final challenge was delivery. Major Martin could not simply be pushed off a boat. The forensic details had to be perfect. The body was carefully preserved in a specially constructed, airtight canister filled with dry ice. The canister itself was labeled "Handle with Care, Optical Instruments." On April 19, 1943, this somber cargo was loaded onto the submarine HMS Seraph. The crew was told only that they were carrying a top-secret meteorological device. Only the captain, Lieutenant Bill Jewell, knew the truth. The journey through the Bay of Biscay and around Portugal was fraught with tension. The Seraph was a cramped, claustrophobic world of steel, sweat, and the smell of diesel. For days, the crew went about their duties, unaware that they were sharing their confined space with a silent passenger. When they finally reached the designated point, about a mile off the coast of Huelva, the moment of truth arrived. In the pre-dawn darkness of April 30th, the submarine surfaced. The canister was brought on deck. Lieutenant Jewell and his officers carefully opened it, releasing a cloud of vapor into the cold night air. They gently lifted Major Martin out. His body was stiff, his face an unnerving shade of gray. They put his life jacket on, checked the briefcase one last time, and then, as the submarine's engines hummed softly, Lieutenant Jewell recited the 39th Psalm. "I will keep my mouth with a bridle, while the wicked is before me. Lord, make me to know mine end, and the measure of my days, what it is, that I may know how frail I am." With that quiet prayer for a man he never knew, they gently pushed the body of Major Martin into the sea, where the tide would carry him and his world-altering secret toward the Spanish shore. Back in London, the waiting began. It was an agony of silence. Every hour that passed without news was an hour closer to failure. Did the body wash ashore? Was it found by the right people? Or had their phantom officer simply sunk without a trace, taking the entire operation with him into the depths? The fate of the free world rested on the currents of the Atlantic and the curiosity of a Spanish fisherman. The story of how a small group of thinkers could outwit an entire empire is a testament to the power of the human mind. If you find these deep dives into history's most pivotal moments compelling, please like this video and share it with someone who appreciates the art of strategy and the courage of intellect. It helps our community grow and allows us to tell more stories like this. 1. The body of the man known as Major William Martin was discovered later that morning by a local fisherman named Jose Antonio Rey. Maria. The sight of a uniformed British officer floating in the water was a shock, and the Spanish authorities were immediately notified. As Montague had gambled, the news traveled quickly. Spain's neutrality was a fragile thing, and its military and intelligence services were deeply intertwined with the Germans. The initial autopsy was cursory, and the cause of death was officially listed as asphyxiation due to immersion in the sea, drowning. The first hurdle had been cleared. The attaché case, however, was the real prize. It was taken by the Spanish Navy, and its existence was reported up the chain of command. In Madrid, the German military attaché, a man with deep connections inside the Franco regime, was alerted. The Abwehr was electrified. This was a potential intelligence windfall of unimaginable proportions, but they had to act carefully. The British were already, through diplomatic channels, making strenuous and official-sounding inquiries about their missing officer and, more importantly, his briefcase, stressing its confidential nature. This British anxiety was a crucial part of the performance, designed to make the contents of the case seem even more valuable. A high-ranking Spanish officer with Nazi sympathies allowed the local German agent, Adolf Klaus, access to the documents. With extreme care, the seals on the envelopes were broken using a thin, heated rod. The letters inside were delicately removed, taken to a hidden location, and photographed in meticulous detail. The agent then painstakingly resealed the envelopes, attempting to leave no trace of his espionage. The briefcase, with its contents seemingly undisturbed, was then formally handed over to the British consulate. The bait had been taken. The photographs were sent via diplomatic pouch to Berlin, directly to the highest levels of German intelligence. In his remote headquarters in East Prussia, the Wolf's Lair, Adolf Hitler received the intelligence. It was a bombshell. For weeks, his generals had been telling him that Sicily was the logical target, that all intelligence pointed to an Allied invasion there. But Hitler had a deep-seated distrust of his own command structure. He often preferred his own intuition, and he was pathologically susceptible to intelligence that confirmed his own biases. The documents from Major Martin's briefcase did exactly that. The idea of an invasion through the Balkans had always been one of his strategic fears. This captured letter seemed to be the ultimate proof. It felt too good to be true, and for some German officers, it was. They raised doubts. Could it be a plant? But the sheer quality of the deception, the mundane, personal details of Major Martin's life, argued for its authenticity. Why would the Allies go to such extraordinary lengths? Why would they create such a detailed and flawed character, complete with an overdraft notice and a disapproving father, just for a deception? The lie was so audacious, so grand, that it paradoxically became believable. Hitler, over a series of crucial meetings, dismissed the warnings of his generals. He was convinced. He announced that the discovery of the courier's body is a decisive factor. He declared that all measures in Sicily and Sardinia were to be secondary. The primary focus must now be on Greece and the Balkans. The order went out. The effect was immediate and catastrophic for the German war effort. A veteran panzer division was moved from France to Greece. 2 other panzer divisions were ordered to prepare to move to the Balkans. German torpedo boats were redeployed from Sicily to the Greek islands. Experienced mine-laying vessels were sent to fortify the Greek coast. Most critically, General Erwin Rommel, the Desert Fox, one of Germany's most brilliant commanders, was sent to Athens to organize the defense of the region. Every soldier, every tank, every plane moved away from Sicily was a life saved, a step closer to Allied victory. Back in London, the codebreakers at Bletchley Park, who were secretly reading high-level German communications through the Ultra program, began to pick up the frantic messages. They intercepted the German orders to reinforce Greece and Sardinia. They read the German assessments that confirmed the authenticity of the captured documents. Finally, on May 12th, a message was sent to Winston Churchill, who was in Washington meeting with President Roosevelt. It contained a single, triumphant sentence: "Mincemeat swallowed rod." Line and sinker. The deception had worked beyond their wildest dreams. On July 9, 1943, the largest amphibious invasion in history up to that point began. Operation Husky, over 160,000 Allied troops stormed the beaches of southern Sicily. They had braced for a bloodbath, for the withering fire of an entrenched and prepared enemy. Instead, they were met with scattered and confused resistance. The German and Italian defenders were caught completely off guard. The coastal defenses were weak, the air support was minimal, and the crucial panzer divisions that could have driven the invaders back into the sea were hundreds of miles away, sitting uselessly in Greece, waiting for an invasion that would never come. The battle for Sicily was still hard fought, but the element of surprise, bought and paid for by the ghost of Major Martin, was decisive. The island fell to the Allies in just 38 days. The strategic consequences were immense. The Mediterranean was now open to Allied shipping. The path to the Italian mainland was clear. Shortly after the fall of Sicily, Mussolini was deposed and arrested, and Italy was knocked out of the war. The soft underbelly had been breached, beginning the long, arduous, but now unstoppable march toward Berlin. The war was shortened, perhaps by years, and the number of lives saved, Allied and German alike, is impossible to calculate. But it is certainly in the tens of thousands. An entire phantom life, created in a London morgue, had saved a legion of real ones. The story of Operation Mincemeat is a story of war, but its legacy is one of human ingenuity. It is a testament to the idea that the pen can, in fact, be mightier than the sword, that a well-crafted narrative can be more powerful than a panzer division. It speaks to the quiet, often unseen, heroism of the intelligence officers who fought their battles not in trenches, but in shadowed rooms, armed with little more than their intellect and their imagination. And what of the man at the center of it all? The man who was Glyndwr Michael. He was buried with full military honors in the cemetery in Huelva, Spain. For decades, his gravestone bore the name of the fictional man he had become, William Martin. The local population, believing him to be a genuine hero, tended to his grave. It was not until 1996 that the British government officially confirmed his true identity. A man who had so little in life, a man who died alone and in despair, gave more in death than most people can imagine. His final resting place now bears an additional inscription, one that acknowledges the silent sacrifice he made. Glyndwr Michael served as Major William Martin, R.M. His story, and the story of the brilliant minds who crafted his final mission, reminds us that courage takes many forms. It is not always found in the heat of battle. Sometimes it is found in the quiet audacity of an idea. It is the courage to believe that a story can change the world, that a lie can serve the truth, and that a single, forgotten life can be the fulcrum upon which history turns. In the grand, brutal theater of war, the most powerful, Ghost was not one of vengeance, but one of invention. A silent hero, born of a lie, who delivered a world-changing truth. If this journey into the hidden corridors of history moved you, please consider joining our community by subscribing. We believe that understanding the past is the best way to understand ourselves. Thank you for listening.